Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into Lean Six Sigma for Service, all sparked by a review of Lean Six Sigma for Service. We're going to uncover how this combo of lean speed and Six Sigma quality can seriously shake up service industries.
Yeah, it really makes you think how these methods, often used in making stuff can be tweaked to handle those unique problems you find in service sectors.
It does. It makes you wonder, instead of just those usual explanations of what Lean and Six Sigma are there any real-world examples like companies that have used them in service industries and it really worked?
Absolutely. Look at Amazon, they've totally nailed those lean principles, making their fulfillment centers super fast and efficient. Every single process, from managing all that inventory to figuring out the best routes for packages, is designed to cut out waste and get those deliveries out the door ASAP.
That's wild. So while we usually picture lean with like physical things, it's clear it can be just as good at making digital operations smoother, huh?
Exactly. And for a perfect example of Six Sigma, just look at Starbucks. They've gone deep, analyzing how they make all those drinks to make sure the quality is top-notch and customers are happy. Think about it. It doesn't matter which Starbucks you go to, anywhere in the world, your latte will taste pretty much the same. That's Six Sigma in action.
That level of consistency, it's kind of mind-blowing, especially when you think about how each drink is made by a person. But what about companies just starting to explore Lean Six Sigma? The review mentioned that doing things that don't actually add value can eat up a huge chunk of service costs.
Right on. It's not unusual at all for companies to find out that something like 50% of what they spend on services is tied to stuff that doesn't directly help the customer. Classic examples are mountains of paperwork or having to get a million approvals for everything.
So it's like hidden waste lurking in the system, just slowing everything down and hurting profits. I bet uncovering and getting rid of that waste could save companies a ton of money.
Absolutely. And that's where Lean Six Sigma really shines. By looking closely at every little step in a service process and finding those activities that don't add value, companies can streamline their operations and put their resources into things that really matter to the customer.
It's like decluttering your workspace, but on a way bigger scale. You get rid of all the unnecessary stuff and create a more efficient and productive environment. But this idea of eliminating waste also makes me wonder, doesn't achieving Six Sigma quality sometimes mean adding extra steps to double check and control things? Wouldn't that clash with the whole lean principle of speed?
That's a great question, and it really shows why getting that balance between Lean and Six Sigma right is so important. The key is to focus on eliminating waste within those quality control processes themselves. Instead of adding more bureaucracy, you come up with clever ways to build quality checks into the existing workflow.
So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Gotcha. Can you give me an example of how a company might pull this off in a service setting? Picture a call center that's struggling with crazy long wait times and customer service that's all over the place. A lean approach might mean streamlining how calls are routed so customers get to the right agent faster. But if you don't have Six Sigma, you might end up sacrificing quality for speed.
So customers might get through faster, but then they end up with an agent who can't actually solve their problem. Not exactly a great customer experience.
Exactly. So by using those Six Sigma principles, you can tackle the quality problem at the same time. For example, they can set up a knowledge management system so agents have instant access to all the info they need to solve customer problems quickly and accurately.
Makes sense. You're making the service both faster and better. It's a win-win for the company and the customer. But how do companies actually implement this in the real world? The review mentioned something about black belts and green belts.
Right. Think of black belts as your in-house Lean Six Sigma gurus. They're the ones leading those process improvement projects and coaching others. Green belts have the basics down and often help out on those projects.
So companies invest in training their people to become these Lean Six Sigma experts. But what about the return on that investment? The review mentioned some pretty impressive figures.
Yes, the book pointed out that companies see big financial gains from using Lean Six Sigma. It's not unusual at all for a well-executed Six Sigma project to save hundreds of thousands of dollars or bring in more revenue.
Wow, that's a pretty strong argument for investing in this methodology. It's not just about making things more efficient, it's about getting real, tangible business results. But are there any specific examples or case studies that illustrate this?
Definitely. Let's look at this example of a big bank that was having trouble with customers leaving their mortgage department. They brought in Lean Six Sigma to analyze the whole mortgage application process, for the initial inquiry all the way to the final approval.
I can only imagine how complicated that process must be. Tons of paperwork and potential for things to get held up.
You're telling me. And by applying those Lean Six Sigma principles, they found a bunch of bottlenecks and areas that could be improved. They streamlined how they verified documents, automated certain steps, and gave employees the power to make decisions faster.
So they managed to improve both the speed and quality of the service, but what happened to their bottom line?
The results were impressive. They slashed the time it took to process those mortgage applications, which led to a massive drop in customers leaving. And by making their operations leaner, they saved millions of dollars in operating costs too.
That's powerful proof of how Lean Six Sigma can completely change things. It's not just some theory, it's a practical method that delivers real-world results.
Absolutely. And the best part is, those principles can be used in any industry and at any scale. It's all about understanding the core concepts and adapting them to your specific needs and challenges.
So, whether you're a giant corporation or a small local coffee shop, there's something to gain from adopting the Lean Six Sigma approach. But this brings up another point from the book review. The 5 principles of excellence. What are those, and how do they fit into achieving success with Lean Six Sigma?
These principles are like your roadmap to implementing Lean Six Sigma the right way. The first one is understanding customer value. It's about getting a deep understanding of what your customers really care about and making sure your processes are set up to deliver that value consistently.
It's about putting the customer front and center in everything you do. What's the next principle?
The second principle is value stream mapping. This is where you visually map out every single step involved in delivering that customer value from beginning to end.
So you can see the whole picture and find areas where you can streamline or cut out waste. What about the third principle?
The third one is creating workflow, making sure those tasks flow smoothly and efficiently without any bottlenecks or delays. It's about optimizing how things are handed off between different stages of the process.
It's like conducting an orchestra, making sure each section is in sync to create a beautiful symphony of service. And what about the fourth principle?
The fourth principle is managing cycle time, which is all about shrinking the time it takes to complete each step in the process. It's about getting rid of unnecessary delays and handoffs.
So you're speeding things up without sacrificing quality. That brings us to the fifth and final principle.
The fifth one is striving for perfection, which is about constantly looking for ways to improve quality and reduce defects. It's about making continuous improvement part of the DNA of your organization.
It's about never settling for good enough and always pushing the limits of what's possible. Now, the book review also pointed out some lessons learned from companies that successfully implemented Lean Six Sigma. What were some of those key takeaways?
One of the biggest lessons is to tailor the methodology to fit your specific organization and its culture. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, and it's crucial to adapt the implementation to your unique context.
So it's about taking the core principles and making them your own. What else stood out to you?
Another key takeaway is to start small, pick manageable projects to gain momentum, and rack up some early wins. Trying to do too much at once can be overwhelming and create resistance.
It's about taking baby steps and celebrating those early successes to build confidence and get everyone excited. The review also mentioned Bank One and the City of Fort Wayne's experience with Lean Six Sigma. What can we learn from them?
Bank One's success showed how important it is to give credit to the business units actually driving the improvements. It's about empowering those folks on the front lines to own the process and get recognition for their contributions. And the City of Fort Wayne's experience showed how even simple Lean Six Sigma tools could make a big difference. They saw awareness and understanding spread like wildfire after implementing their initial training.
That's encouraging. It suggests that you don't have to be a black belt or a statistics whiz to start reaping the benefits of Lean Six Sigma principles. Even small, gradual changes can make a difference.
You got it. It's about shifting mindsets and fostering a culture of continuous improvement, one small step at a time.
Well, it seems like we've covered a lot of ground already. We've explored the basics of Lean and Six Sigma, looked at real-world examples of how they're being used in service industries, and unpacked the key principles for successful implementation. But before we move on, I'd like to get your thoughts on how Lean Six Sigma tackles the issue of complexity, which the review highlighted as a major challenge in service industries.
Great point. As service processes get more and more complicated, the chances of things going wrong and customers getting unhappy increase. That's where Lean Six Sigma can really come in handy to simplify and optimize those complex processes.
So it's not just about making things faster, it's also about making them simpler and more reliable. Can you give us an example of how a company might tackle complexity using Lean Six Sigma?
Imagine a telecommunications company with a billing system that's a total mess. Customers are complaining about confusing invoices and billing errors left and right. By applying Lean Six Sigma, they could map out their entire billing process, find areas where things are redundant and overly complex, and then streamline the whole thing to make it more transparent and user-friendly.
So they're cutting out the unnecessary steps and making the process easier for the customer to understand.
Exactly. And by standardizing those processes and reducing variations, they can minimize errors and boost customer satisfaction.
Makes perfect sense. But tackling complexity can be daunting, especially for large organizations.
True. The book review actually cited a pretty sobering statistic from Ramcharan, who said that a whopping 70% of companies fail because of poor execution.
Whoa, that's a reality check. It highlights how important it is to not just understand the ideas behind Lean Six Sigma, but also have a clear plan for how to actually put it into practice. So how do companies effectively roll out Lean Six Sigma and avoid becoming part of that statistic?
The book review lays out four crucial phases of deployment: readiness, engagement, mobilization, and performance and control.
Okay, let's break those down. What exactly does the readiness phase involve?
Readiness is all about prepping the organization for change. It's about getting key stakeholders on board, communicating the vision and goals of the initiative, and taking stock of where the organization stands in terms of being ready to implement Lean Six Sigma.
So it's about laying the groundwork for a smooth and successful transition.
You got it. It's about setting the stage for a culture of continuous improvement and making sure everyone understands why Lean Six Sigma is important for the organization's success.
Makes sense. What about the engagement phase? How do you get everyone on board and excited about Lean Six Sigma?
Engagement is about sparking that enthusiasm and getting buy-in from employees at all levels. It's about communicating the benefits of Lean Six Sigma, providing training and development opportunities, and empowering employees to be active participants in the transformation.
So it's about turning those passive observers into active participants. What about the mobilization phase?
Mobilization is where things get real. It's about setting up the infrastructure, defining clear goals and metrics, picking the right projects to tackle, and allocating resources strategically.
It's about putting the plan into action. And finally, what about the performance and control phase?
This phase is all about monitoring progress, tracking those results, making adjustments when needed, and making sure the whole initiative stays aligned with the organization's big picture goals. It's about weaving Lean Six Sigma into the very fabric of the company.
So it's about making Lean Six Sigma a lasting part of the organizational culture, not just a temporary fad.
Exactly. It's about establishing a culture of continuous improvement that permeates every single aspect of the business.
This all sounds super promising, but the review also mentions some common pitfalls to watch out for during deployment. What are some of those traps that companies should be aware of?
One common pitfall is what we call project drift, where projects lose focus and veer off course from their original goals.
It's like setting off on a road trip with a clear destination in mind, but then getting distracted by every interesting little detour along the way. You might enjoy the scenery, but you'll never reach your intended destination.
That's a perfect analogy. Another pitfall is taking on too many projects at once. It can spread resources too thin, leading to a lack of focus and ultimately failure.
It's like trying to juggle way too many balls in the air. Some are bound to come crashing down and the whole act falls apart. What other traps should companies keep an eye out for?
Inadequate tracking of results is a big one. If you're not measuring your progress and analyzing the data, you're basically flying blind. You won't know what's working, what's not, and whether you're actually achieving the desired outcomes.
Data is king. It's like the compass that guides your Lean Six Sigma journey. Without it, you're lost at sea. What else should companies be mindful of?
Another common mistake is failing to share best practices and lessons learned across the entire organization. This can lead to silos of knowledge and missed opportunities for collaboration and improvement.
It's like each team is reinventing the wheel instead of learning from each other's successes and failures.
You nailed it. And lastly, companies often overlook the importance of getting everyone in the organization involved, not just those directly involved in the Lean Six Sigma rollout.
So it's not just about training a select group of black belts and green belts. It's about creating a company-wide culture of continuous improvement.
Exactly. It's about empowering everyone to contribute to making things better, regardless of their role or title.
That's a powerful message. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels ownership and responsibility for driving positive change.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a crucial aspect of Lean Six Sigma deployment that we'll explore in more detail later: change management.
Okay, I'm all ears. Change can be a tough nut to crack, especially in big organizations. What are some key insights from the review on navigating this challenging terrain?
The review stresses that there's no quick fix or magic bullet solution. Successful change management calls for a thoughtful, strategic approach that puts people first.
So it's about recognizing the human element of change and addressing those fears, uncertainties, and resistance that often come with it. What are some specific strategies for effectively managing change when rolling out Lean Six Sigma?
Well, one key strategy is to get employees involved right from the start. This can help them feel more invested in the initiative and less resistant to change.
It's about empowering them to be part of the solution rather than imposing change on them from above. What else can companies do to make the transition smoother?
Another critical strategy is to clearly explain the why behind Lean Six Sigma. What are the burning platforms? What challenges is company facing? And how can Lean Six Sigma help tackle those challenges and achieve the big picture goals?
It's about painting a compelling picture of the future and showing people how Lean Six Sigma can benefit both the company and its employees.
You got it. It's about connecting the dots between the initiative and individual goals, showing people how it can help them achieve their own personal and professional aspirations.
So it's about turning the what into the why and making the initiative personally relevant to everyone involved.
Precisely. And once you've established a clear purpose and got your employees on board, it's important to celebrate those early wins and recognize the contributions of individuals and teams. This helps build momentum, reinforce positive behaviors, and create a sense of shared accomplishment.
It's about acknowledging progress, recognizing effort, and keeping those energy and enthusiasm levels high. Success breeds success, right?
Exactly. And to make sure Lean Six Sigma is successful in the long run, it needs to become deeply ingrained in the company culture. This means incorporating its principles into everyday processes, training programs, performance reviews, and even reward systems.
So it's not just a project or initiative, it's a way of life. It becomes part of the company's DNA.
Exactly. It's about building a culture of continuous improvement, where everyone is empowered to spot problems, suggest solutions, and contribute to making things better.
Well, it looks like we've covered a ton of ground in this first part of our deep dive into Lean Six Sigma for service. We've explored those core concepts, the benefits, the challenges, and the strategies for successful implementation. But before we dig deeper into change management and the practical applications of Lean Six Sigma in the next part, I'd love to hear your perspective on one final point from the review: the importance of listening to the customer.
Yes. That's a fundamental principle of Lean Six Sigma, and it's absolutely essential for achieving lasting success. After all, everything we do should ultimately be focused on delivering value to the customer.
Right. The review stresses that we should be listening to every customer: current customers, potential customers, and even those customers we've lost.
Absolutely. Each group offers valuable insights into what's working, what's not, and how we can improve. They hold the key to unlocking higher levels of customer satisfaction and loyalty.
So it's about actively seeking feedback, analyzing the data, and using it to drive continuous improvement. But it's not just about collecting feedback, it's about acting on it. What are some practical ways companies can show they're truly listening to their customers and taking their feedback to heart?
That's a fantastic question, and it's something we'll dive into more deeply in the next part of our deep dive. For now, I encourage our listeners to think about this question and consider how the principles of Lean Six Sigma might apply to their own lives or work.
That's a great challenge for our listeners. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part, and I'm excited to continue our exploration of Lean Six Sigma for service in the next part. Until then, keep those questions coming.
I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation and uncovering even more insights into this fascinating topic.
Welcome back. I've been thinking about that question you asked before the break. How can companies show they're really listening to their customers? It's easy to say, we value feedback, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, it's definitely more than just sending out surveys or having a suggestion box. Truly listening means making customer feedback a part of every level of the organization and using it to drive real, meaningful change.
So it's not just about gathering the data, it's about turning that data into action. What are some concrete ways companies can actually do that?
One powerful way is to give those frontline employees the power to solve customer problems right then and there. Give them the authority and the tools to make decisions that benefit the customer without having to jump through a million hoops or escalate every little issue.
So it's about cutting through the red tape and giving employees the freedom to do what's right for the customer. I can imagine that could have a huge impact on customer satisfaction.
Absolutely. When customers feel like their concerns are heard and dealt with quickly and efficiently, they're much more likely to stick around. Another way to show you're listening is to be proactive about getting that feedback. Don't just wait for complaints to start pouring in. Actively seek out feedback at different points throughout the customer's journey.
That's a great point. It's about being proactive instead of reactive. So instead of waiting for customers to come to you with problems, you're going to them and asking for their input. What are some ways companies can proactively gather feedback?
Oh, there are tons of creative ways to do this. You can use online surveys, polls on social media, focus groups, or even just casual conversations with customers. The main thing is to make it easy for customers to share their thoughts and ideas.
It's about meeting customers where they are and making the feedback process as smooth as possible. But getting the feedback is just the first step. What are some effective ways to actually act on that feedback and make real changes?
One approach is to create what we call a closed-loop feedback system. This basically means acknowledging every single piece of feedback you receive, telling customers how you're using it to make things better, and then following up with them to let them know what actions you've taken.
So it's about closing the feedback loop and showing customers that their input is valuable and actually being used to make improvements. What are some other ways companies can show they're taking customer feedback seriously?
Another great approach is to get customers directly involved in the improvement process. Invite them to participate in beta testing, help with product development, or even be a part of workshops where you're redesigning processes.
That's a fantastic idea. It's about turning customers into collaborators and partners in the improvement process. But let's switch gears for a minute and go back to those deployment pitfalls we discussed earlier. Can you give us some real-world examples of how those pitfalls can totally derail a Lean Six Sigma initiative?
Sure, let's take Project Drift as an example. Imagine a hospital that's trying to use Lean Six Sigma to cut down on patient wait times in the emergency room. They start out with a clear goal and a solid plan, but as the project goes on, they get bogged down in internal politics and all these competing priorities.
So the original focus on improving patient care gets sidetracked by other agendas.
Exactly. The project starts to veer off course from its original purpose, and the team loses sight of what they were actually trying to achieve. Shorter wait times for patients.
And without that clear focus, the project is likely to fail. What about taking on too many projects all at once? How can that sabotage a Lean Six Sigma initiative?
Picture this. A manufacturing company is super excited about Lean Six Sigma and decides to launch a bunch of process improvement projects all at the same time across different departments.
Yeah,
They've got the enthusiasm, but they quickly realize they've taken on way too much.
they've bitten off more than they can chew.
Exactly. They don't have the resources, the people, or the expertise to manage all these projects effectively. Some projects get put on hold, others get scrapped altogether, and the whole initiative loses steam.
It's like juggling too many balls at once. You're bound to drop a few, and the whole act falls apart. Now, what about inadequate tracking of results? How does that hold back a Lean Six Sigma deployment?
Okay, let's say you have a software company that's using Lean Six Sigma to reduce bugs in their code. They implement new processes and tools, but they don't have a good system in place for tracking how well those changes are working. They're gathering data, but they're not analyzing it in a way that's helpful.
So they're driving blind? They have no clue if their efforts are actually paying off.
You got it. Without data to guide their decision-making, they can't tell if they're on the right track, if they need to change their approach, or if they're achieving the results they wanted. They're essentially taking shots in the dark and hoping for the best.
Data is like the compass that guides the Lean Six Sigma journey. Without it, you're lost. Now, what about the pitfall of not sharing those best practices? How does that affect a Lean Six Sigma initiative?
Imagine a financial institution that's implementing Lean Six Sigma in their loan processing department. One team comes up with a brilliant new process that streamlines loan approvals, but they keep that knowledge and their methods all to themselves.
So instead of sharing what they've learned and letting other teams benefit from their success, they hoard their knowledge and create a silo.
Exactly. This not only limits the overall impact of the Lean Six Sigma initiative, but also creates a culture of secrecy and competition. rather than one of collaboration and continuous improvement.
It's like each team is working on their own little puzzle instead of working together to solve a much bigger puzzle. The lack of knowledge sharing really holds back progress and keeps the organization from reaching its full potential. Now, the final pitfall you mentioned was neglecting to get everyone in the organization involved. Why is that so important for the success of Lean Six Sigma?
Okay, let's say we have a retail chain that's implementing Lean Six Sigma to improve their inventory management system. They put all their focus on training warehouse staff and store managers, but they forget to communicate the changes to their sales associates and cashiers.
So the people on the front lines, the ones interacting with customers every day, are left out of the loop.
Exactly. This creates confusion, frustration, and resistance to change. The sales associates don't understand why these new processes are being put in place, and they feel like their opinions don't matter.
It's like trying to build a house without bringing in the electricians and plumbers. You might end up with a pretty exterior, but the internal systems won't work right.
Perfect analogy. To successfully implement Lean Six Sigma, you need everyone in the organization to be on board, from the CEO all the way down to entry-level employees.
It's about fostering a culture of shared ownership and responsibility for continuous improvement. But creating that kind of culture requires diving deep into the world of change management, something we touched on earlier. What are some key principles or strategies for managing change effectively when you're rolling out Lean Six Sigma?
One of the most important principles is transparency. Be open and honest with your employees about why these changes are happening, what you're hoping to achieve, and how those changes might affect them.
So it's about being upfront and straightforward, even when the news might not be all sunshine and roses.
Precisely. It's about building trust and credibility by communicating in a way that's transparent and genuine. Another essential principle is empathy. Recognize that change can be unsettling and try to understand how it's making people feel. Be sensitive to their fears and concerns.
So put yourself in their shoes and really understand how this is impacting them emotionally. What else can companies do to make this transition smoother?
Get employees involved in the process right from the beginning. This might involve asking for their input on process improvements, inviting them to attend training sessions, or even giving them the chance to lead smaller Lean Six Sigma projects.
It's about giving them a voice and making them active participants in the change, not just passive recipients. What are some other effective strategies for managing change?
Another important strategy is to celebrate those early wins and give recognition to individuals and teams for their contributions. This helps build momentum, keep morale high, and create a sense of shared accomplishment.
It's about acknowledging the progress being made and showing people that their efforts are truly making a difference. Success breeds success, as they say.
You said it. And finally, it's crucial to provide ongoing support and training to help employees adapt to the new way of doing things.
So give them the tools and knowledge they need to thrive in this new environment.
Absolutely. Change management isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous process. It takes consistent effort, open communication, and a commitment to supporting your employees throughout the entire transition.
It sounds like change management is complicated and has a lot of moving parts, but it's also a crucial ingredient for making any Lean Six Sigma initiative successful.
Couldn't agree more. Without effective change management, even the most brilliant process improvements will probably fail. It's as much about winning over people's hearts and minds as it is about optimizing processes and systems.
Well said. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier: eliminating waste. It's one of the core principles of Lean, but it can sometimes be a bit hard to grasp. Can you give us some real-life examples of what waste looks like in a service setting and how companies can actually identify and get rid of it?
Of course, waste comes in many forms in a service environment. It could be time wasted waiting for approvals, effort wasted doing the same work twice, resources wasted on unnecessary reports, or even customer goodwill wasted because of poor service.
So it's about looking beyond the obvious physical waste and spotting those less tangible forms of waste that can really drag down efficiency and profitability.
Exactly. And to effectively eliminate waste, you first need to know where it's happening. This means mapping out your processes, looking at each step, and asking yourself some critical questions.
Like what kinds of questions?
Questions like, is this activity actually adding value for the customer? Does it contribute to our goals? If not, how can we eliminate it or make it more efficient?
So it's about challenging the status quo and questioning why we do things the way we do.
Absolutely. And once you've found those areas of waste, you can start coming up with ways to eliminate or reduce them. This might involve simplifying processes, automating tasks, cutting out unnecessary steps, or even just improving communication and collaboration.
So make every effort count. Can you give us any specific examples of companies that have successfully eliminated waste in their service operations?
Sure. A great example is this healthcare provider that used Lean Six Sigma to streamline their patient discharge process. They found several areas where things were wasteful, like unnecessary paperwork, duplicate approvals, and communication breakdowns between departments.
I can see how those inefficiencies could cause delays and frustration for patients.
Definitely. By making improvements to the process, like switching to electronic forms, using automated notifications, and having a central discharge coordinator, they were able to drastically reduce discharge times and boost patient satisfaction.
That's a great example of how Lean Six Sigma can be used to make a real difference in people's lives. Do you have any other examples you could share?
Of course. Another great one is this insurance company that used Lean Six Sigma to speed up their claims processing. They found that they were wasting a ton of time on manual data entry, unnecessary approvals, and searching for missing information.
Those sound like classic examples of waste in a service environment.
Exactly. By automating some processes, streamlining workflows, and improving communication between departments, they were able to dramatically reduce the time it took to process claims. This not only made customers happier, but also freed up employees to focus on more important tasks.
So it's a win-win for the company and the customer. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive and move on to the final part, where we'll explore how transformative Lean Six Sigma can be and look at some real-world case studies, I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If you had to pick just one Lean Six Sigma principle to focus on in your own life or work, which one would you choose and why?
That's a great question. It really makes us think about how we can apply these powerful principles to improve things in our own little corner of the world.
Exactly. So, as we take a moment to reflect on that question, I encourage our listeners to think about the areas where they see the most waste, the processes that could be streamlined, and the opportunities to create more value for the people they serve.
I can't wait to explore those ideas even further in the last part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring Lean Six Sigma for service, and I'm really excited to wrap things up by talking about its impact in the real world.
It's pretty amazing to see how these principles, which we often think of in a manufacturing setting, can be so transformative in service industries. Looking back at what we've discussed, what really strikes me is the sheer variety of applications.
It really does show that Lean Six Sigma isn't limited to one particular industry or sector. From healthcare to finance, those core principles of reducing waste, focusing on the customer, and always striving to improve are universally applicable. What would you say is the most compelling evidence of its power to transform things?
Well, the success stories are truly inspiring. One that comes to mind is this major airline that used Lean Six Sigma to revamp their baggage handling process. They were dealing with a mountain of complaints from customers about lost or delayed luggage.
Oof, that's a nightmare for any traveler. I can only imagine how frustrating and inconvenient that would be. So, how did Lean Six Sigma help them turn things around?
They started by meticulously mapping out their entire baggage handling process from the moment you check your bag to when you pick it up at your destination. By applying those lean principles, they found a bunch of bottlenecks and areas of waste, like inefficient routing, manual sorting errors, and communication breakdowns between the ground crews.
So they were able to pinpoint the root causes of those delays and errors. What kind of solutions did they come up with?
Well, they brought in automated baggage tracking systems, streamlined their loading procedures, and implemented stronger communication protocols between all the ground staff. But they didn't stop there. They also used Six Sigma to reduce the variability in their processes, making sure that bags were handled consistently and accurately every step of the way.
So they were focusing on both the speed and the quality of the service. What was the impact of all these changes?
The results were amazing. They significantly reduced the number of mishandled bags, got their on-time baggage delivery rates way up, and saw a huge decrease in customer complaints. But the benefits went beyond just making their operations better.
Oh, really? How so?
By fixing their baggage handling process, they improved the whole customer experience, which led to happier and more loyal customers. They even saw an increase in repeat business and positive word-of-mouth referrals.
That's a fantastic example of how focusing on operational excellence can lead to real, tangible business results. Do you have any other examples of how Lean Six Sigma has led to big changes in service industries?
You bet. Another great case study is this big hospital that used Lean Six Sigma to improve patient flow in their emergency room. They were struggling with long wait times, overcrowding, and frustrated patients.
That's such a critical issue, especially in a setting where time is of the essence. So how do they approach this problem using Lean Six Sigma?
They began by observing the patient journey, mapping out every single step from the moment a patient arrived until they were discharged. They realized that a significant amount of time was being wasted on unnecessary paperwork, tests that were being repeated, and delays in communication between departments.
So a classic case of waste and inefficiency getting in the way of providing quality care.
Got it. By using lean principles, they streamlined their admission process, cut out unnecessary steps, and introduced visual management tools to track patient flow in real time. They also used Six Sigma to make sure treatment protocols were more consistent, guaranteeing that all patients received the same high-quality care.
Wow. What was the impact of these changes? Did it make a difference for the hospital's operations and, more importantly, for patient outcomes?
The results were incredible. They saw a significant reduction in patient wait times, improved bed turnover rates, and even noticed a jump in patient satisfaction scores. But the most important result was that the quality of care got better, which was clear from a decrease in medical errors and complications.
That's truly remarkable. It shows how Lean Six Sigma can be used not only to boost efficiency, but also to enhance the quality and safety of healthcare.
Absolutely. And these are just two examples of the many success stories out there. Lean Six Sigma has been used to improve customer service in call centers, streamline loan processing in banks, make supply chains more efficient in retail, and even help students achieve better outcomes in education.
It's amazing how versatile and powerful this methodology is and how it can be applied to so many different service industries. Before we wrap things up, though, I want to revisit something we talked about earlier. The role of leadership in getting people to adopt Lean Six Sigma and keeping that momentum going over time. What does the book review say about how leaders can create a culture where continuous improvement is the norm?
The review emphasized that leadership is crucial for any Lean Six Sigma initiative to succeed. Leaders can't just be sponsors. They need to be true champions for change. They need to walk the talk, embody the principles, and create an environment where everyone values and is rewarded for continuous improvement.
So it's about leading by example. Actions speak louder than words, and when employees see their leaders embracing Lean Six Sigma, they're more likely to get on board.
That's exactly it. Leaders also need to provide the resources, training, and support to make sure employees have what they need to succeed. And just as important, they need to build a culture where it's okay to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn from those mistakes.
It's about fostering an environment of psychological safety, where people feel comfortable taking risks, trying new things, and sharing their ideas without fear of being punished.
Exactly. When you create that kind of atmosphere, you unleash the power of everyone's ideas and set the stage for real innovation.
It sounds like building a culture of continuous improvement is about shifting people's mindsets, not just changing processes.
You're absolutely right. It's about adopting a philosophy of always striving to be better, never settling for good enough.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Well said. And it's a journey that can lead to amazing results, as we've seen from all those companies that have embraced Lean Six Sigma and found success.
That's a perfect note to end on. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, exploring the fascinating world of Lean Six Sigma for service. We've unpacked those core concepts, talked about the benefits and challenges, and seen how it can be truly transformative. But most importantly, we've seen how it can make a real difference in the lives of both customers and employees.
It has been an incredibly insightful conversation. I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights and practical tips they can use in their own lives and work.
I hope so too. And remember, this journey of continuous improvement never really ends. So keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep pushing for excellence in everything you do.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And for anyone looking for more information or resources about Lean Six Sigma, be sure to check out the show notes for this episode.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of new ideas and insights.